Number 10. Overton vs. Bud Light. In 1991, Richard Overton sued Anheuser-Busch, the company behind Bud Light, for false and misleading advertising, for their misleading portrayals of women attracted to men driving a Bud Light truck. Mr. Overton claimed emotional distress, mental injury, and over $10 million in financial loss because of the misleading ads. Overton defended himself, saying he was just doing it to raise awareness against sexual and untrue advertisement. He found his children quite captivated by Spuds MacKenzie, a dog which appeared in several Bud Light commercials, and he was disgusted that the company would draw in children with that kind of advertising. But seeing as his case was rejected, he was obviously going about it the wrong way. Among other things, he also sued for damages relating to blurred vision, impaired motor skills, nausea, and get this, drunk driving. He sued based on a PAA Act, which regulates the pricing and advertising of consumer goods and prohibits untrue statements or representations. Number 9. The mistaken Michael Jordan. Most people in today's society probably wouldn't mind being mistaken for somebody famous, like Miley Cyrus or Daniel Radcliffe, but not basketball player Alan Eckhart. In 2009, he sued Nike and Michael Jordan for $832 million because while he was wearing Nike branded gear, he was mistaken for the famous Michael Jordan. As per his claim, this caused him unjust emotional pain and suffering. He further claimed that Michael Jordan ruined his life because of how similar they appeared, both being African American, having shaved heads, and both wearing one earring. However, when the lawsuit failed, it had an opposite effect than what he intended, and only further linked him with Michael Jordan. When asked how he determined how much to sue for, he said, "Well, you figure with my age, and you multiply that by 7, and then I turn around and I figure that's what it all boils down to." Unsurprisingly, he lost the case and was left with nothing but court fees. Number 8. Liebeck vs. Hot Coffee. One of the more famous examples of ridiculous court action, Stella Liebeck, a 79-year-old woman from New Mexico, sued McDonald's in 1992 for $2.86 million. She did this because while pulling out of a McDonald's drive-thru, her hands shook and she spilled her hot coffee all over her lap in very absorbent cotton pants. The extremely hot pants then burned her legs, rear end, and groin. She was hospitalized for 8 days, having received third-degree burns to her legs, undergoing several skin grafts. She then filed her lawsuit claiming that her coffee was defective and far too hot for human consumption. Astonishingly, she won this case and was awarded a greatly reduced $640,000 in damages. While some professional legal scholars like Jonathan Turley argue that the case did have merit, ABC News called it the poster child for excessive lawsuits. Making things even more ridiculous, HBO premiered a documentary called Hot Coffee, which discussed the Liebeck case in depth, focusing debates on limitations to the ability to file claims and capping the rewards of damages. When the case was later brought up to McDonald's, they showed off a list of over 700 other consumers that had been burned by their products and had not received any compensation. This begs the question as to why aren't we all dumping coffee on ourselves just to make some quick cash? Number 7. Scott Simon vs. the Harding Pharmacy. In 2011, 17-year-old Scott Simon hosted a party, which soon moved to a friend's house in New Jersey, where someone offered him a tablet of the prescription drug Xanax, which had been stolen from a nearby pharmacy. Unfortunately, Scott overdosed and fell into a coma, leaving him with serious nerve damage. Luckily for Scott, his parents did not blame him for the mistake, and instead filed lawsuits against the pharmacy, the parents that hosted the second party, multiple guests, and even the Xanax manufacturer, for a grand total of $4.1 million. Because of this mistake, Scott's ability to both walk and talk were impaired, and they demanded compensation. Neither of Scott's parents would acknowledge that it was ultimately his decision, and instead shifted their blame onto everyone else that they could. As you can imagine, the state court declared that the fault laid with Scott Simon, and further ruling that the company was not to blame for his overdose. While the main lawsuit against the company and pharmacy failed, some of the other smaller ones were settled outside of court for an unknown amount. This case stands as a good lesson for all parents. Your child must take responsibility for their actions. Number 6. In defense of Batman. We know Batman is a classic DC comic hero, but believe it or not, he isn't just a fictional character. In fact, there's a city in Turkey that shares the likeness of his name. In 2009, Hüseyin Kalkan, the mayor of Batman, represented his city by announcing that he planned to sue Christopher Nolan and Warner Bros. For using the town's name without permission. He stated, "The royalty of the name Batman belongs to us. There is only one Batman in the world." He also claimed that not only should the city of Batman receive royalties from the company, but also compensation for the supposed psychological impact of the Dark Knight films, which he attributes to the city's abnormally high female suicide rate. However, Warner Bros. And Christopher Nolan haven't yet received any legal papers. The plan was to show evidence dating the city's origins to a time before Batman first appeared in comics in 1939. There are several theories to how the city got its name, either from an ancient form of measurement also known as the Batman, or possibly a nearby mountain named Bati Rahman. Either way, Hussein Khalkun demands damages. Seeing the Dark Knight series grossed nearly $1 billion, but not a single penny of that revenue went to the city of which its leading character is supposedly named after. Number 5. The Lee vs. Lee case. In 1995, a man named Robert Lee Brock attempted to sue himself for $5 million, claiming that the state of Virginia should pay him for damages, further claiming that he had broken his own civil rights by getting drunk and committing crimes, which ended up with his incarceration. In his official statement, he said that he partook of alcoholic beverages on July 1st, 1993, and as a result caused myself to violate my religious beliefs. For compensation, he said he wanted to pay himself $5 million, but since he is out of work and a ward of the state, he requested that the state pay him on his behalf. The judge who dismissed the case was unfazed, stating that he quite normally got crazy cases coming from small towns. And while he found this case strange, he also noted that Lee had presented an innovative approach to civil rights litigation, but of course that it was totally ludicrous. Number 4. Guilty of ageism. Claiming discrimination in the form of ageism, 77-year-old Rolf Eden sued a 19-year-old woman named Katharina, who had refused to have sex with him after a night out with the old German playboy. He said that there were laws against discrimination and that he was discriminated against because of his age. Over the evening, he had met Katharina in a bar and led with this pickup line: "Listen, you're so pretty, but we both have the same problem. I don't have your phone number and you don't have mine." So he bought her some champagne, took her home, had some more champagne, and even played the piano for her. But her remark, "Please don't be mad, but you're too old for me," ruined him for weeks, leading him to file a lawsuit against her for discrimination. While the lawsuit failed for obvious reasons, Rolf did have a clause in his will that whichever woman shares his bed with him the night of his death will receive a total of 180,000 euros. Sadly enough for him, there have been a total of 0 takers. Number 3. The 46-second case on death row. Randy Kraft, an Orange County serial killer on death row, sued Dennis McDougal and the publisher of the book Angel of Darkness for $62 million. Randy Kraft claimed that the book besmirched his good name, as had McDougal, who had recently published an article about him and his 16 murders, including testimony from a criminal involved in 2 of them. Kraft also claimed innocence to each and every murder, and said that the portrayal of his character in both cases was incorrect. He further claimed the falsehoods would cause him to become shunned by society and that he would be unable to find work once he left the prison. Despite being on death row after being arrested for the murder of Scott Hughes and being found with a scorecard of murders, the scorecard listed phrases, initials, and names that are thought to represent a minimum of 65 murders, 22 of which remain unrecovered and unidentified. The case was thrown out of court in a record of 46 seconds, but not before $30,000 in legal fees was acquired by the publisher. Number 2. In defense of 80 cents. Tova Gerson, a 32-year-old woman from New Jersey, claimed she had been ripped off by retailer Century 21 for a whopping value of 80 cents. She had recently been in the store and made several purchases, saving a bit over $5 with a coupon applied over each item. However, upon returning one of the articles for being the wrong color and requesting a refund, the store neglected to compensate her for the 80 cents her coupon had saved her on that particular product. In order to regain her 80 cents, she sued for $5 million, claiming the chain was unjustly enriched and that she had been deprived the full benefit of her coupon. She also said that had she known she wasn't getting the full value of her coupon, she wouldn't have bothered making the purchase in the first place. Only a few days later, she dropped a lawsuit with no explanation, actually pleading a Daily News reporter not to write about the case. Perhaps she simply realized how ridiculous she was being and took back her claims, although some believe that her father pressured her into it. Number 1. The case of the missing pants. Judge Roy Pearson, tired of his poor service from his dry cleaner in Washington, D.C., decided to sue the business for $54 million because they had lost a pair of his pants. He also claimed that the satisfaction guaranteed sign in the window was a total farce. The way he tallied up the lawsuit was similar to a twisted interest rate, adding $18,000 over the several time periods he was missing the pants. They must have been some really nice pants because he reportedly became teary in court over the loss of his favorite trousers. When the defense showed up with his pants and claim ticket, Pearson rejected the pants, claiming that they were not his, despite the matching ticket. Pearson ended up losing his job and the dry cleaners had to close 2 of their locations to pay legal fees. But in the end, the dry cleaner fought back the lawsuit by arguing that it could only be considered fraud if a reasonable person could be confused over the guarantee. And by now, everyone had reasoned that Mr. Pearson was not a reasonable person.